Hey everybody. Hi, how's it going, Jeff?
Good.
Sean?
Hello, everybody.
Nick?
Hey.
So people are coming in, so let me just remind everyone. Welcome everybody. Let us know where you're watching from. Don't be shy. And then for those who are watching from the Facebook groups, let me remind you to please give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pic, so I'll be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. That's the link under the live, StreamYard.com/Facebook. Give that a click, give the permissions, come on back. Let's see. Well, we've had some people on YouTube a while ago. So Martin was here even 3 hours ago. We got Ren saying, looking forward to this, especially Nick.
Oh, yeah.
From I Am York. Common sense made simple. Yep, cool. Meredith says, love you, Mr. Tengray.
Yeah, she's all right.
He's got his fan club.
That's right.
I hope the hooligans don't show up. That's what I'm worried about. And if they do, hey.
Yeah,
We got my
it'll be
friend
it'll be
John.
live.
Friend John here. Good day, everyone. And Jeff. It's good to see you here again, Jeff. Greetings from New Jersey. Got someone from Facebook from Liverpool, UK.
Oh, yeah.
And Rick Hyde. Hello, all. Mirja from Sweden. Nice. Oh, yes. And so Ingo is having internet problems, so he won't be here today.
Ooh.
But we'll be sure to do a live event with him in the future.
Yeah, you could do a whole event just with him.
Yeah. Sean says the Lone Star State. Salute. Yes, from Texas.
Texas. That's where I got these glasses. Ooh.
Brunsfeldo from San Rafael, California. And we got Eleni from, I know she's in Europe. We got someone from Belgium.
Oh, that might be my mom.
Yeah, so once again, if you're watching from the Facebook groups, please give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pic. That's just the link under the live, StreamYard.com/Facebook. And let's see. Yep, Martin from Germany. Ingo's a buddy. Yeah, Ingo's great. And yeah, Eleni's in Luxembourg. Yeah. And so yeah, speaking of StreamYard makes all this possible to multi-stream. So I'm streaming now to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Love StreamYard, ease of use, but professional streaming. Here's a little shout out to StreamYard. Thanks, StreamYard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now I think I'm hearing a little feedback. Someone's like,
Oh, that might be mine. I have
maybe
on it.
down.
That's this here.
Cool.
Good.
And then we got Bruce is here. Bruce Bicknell. Good to see you.
Bruce.
Cool. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about. So Jeff, do you want to start and talk about yourself and jump in?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for showing up today. I'm Jeff Foster. I've been doing digital imaging since the late 80s. And that was my transformation from traditional art, airbrush, to the digital world. So I've written a ton of books and done videos, spoken at most of the major conferences over the years. And I'm now working for a biotech company in the Bay Area I manage their video and photographic imaging services. And I also moonlight doing various things, including working on a major feature documentary, which I can't really talk about because we're still in production, but it will come out soon and I'll be able to talk about it then. So you can go ahead and start my slideshow there if you'd like.
Excellent.
So I can kind of segue into that.
Great.
Just to kind of give you a little expanse on the background, this was my first Photoshop composite production. I did it as a self-promo piece, and it's before we use terms like digital imaging or anything like that. So this is before layers. This is Photoshop 2.0, and all I could do is use selections and channels to save one selection at a time. So no layers or anything at the time, just imaging and painting right on the selections. So I think you have one undo. Can't remember, but it was hell. But we did have CMYK. Yeah, we did have CMYK with version 2, this was actually just a photo of a card that I had printed. So it was old and sitting in a box, so it's kind of messed up. But it was the first time we could actually preview CMYK in Photoshop. So the reason why I bring that up is because the computer pretty much put me out of business. I was a commercial illustrator, and I did tons of album covers and stuff, and commercial work. And computers kind of put me out of business because anybody could scan something, put it up there, throw some type on it, and send it off to the printer. So a lot of photo albums became really ugly in the late 80s, early 90s, because that's what the record companies are doing, saving all this money on hiring illustrators. So now we're in the brave new world of AI. And this is just some arbitrary stuff that I tried out, some of my early experiences with Midjourney, just typing in stuff, various things. The bottom right is actually, I wanted to see what the Jetsons architecture would look like if rendered in Cinema 4D. So, just weird things like that. But if you ever zoom in on any of the stuff made in Midjourney, you'll look and see that it's really quite horrible. It's just kind of an expression of what something could be. So this was another experiment I did with Apollo 13, if it had been portrayed by Georges Méliès. So a trip to the moon became very different under his eyes. So again, if you look, we got multiple moons and all kinds of stuff, but it really did take on the feel of that period of time. So that was kind of cool. Really good for conceptualizing. This is my People of Walmart category. It was pretty arbitrary. Walmart. The one on the bottom right, I did cheat. I said people of Walmart during an earthquake. So to me, it just looks like any Walmart after a big sale. So
the Walmart apocalypse.
That's right. Exactly. And here's some other really crazy things that came out. Some of this was using DALL-E and static diffusion. The Dog and Pony Show was really bizarre results. Just told it, give it a Wes Anderson cinematic feel. And that's what it gave me. And it really disturbed a lot of people that saw it.
Combined into one animal.
Yeah, it's just this weird thing. And that's what a lot of this does. Probably one of the better ones was my falafel. I was making falafel one afternoon. I said, I wonder what their version of this would look like. And theirs actually looked better than mine. And then, of course, the others are fairly self-explanatory. I don't know why. I must have been high. But some of these... the clock made out of deli meats. It hit me at like 1 a.m. one night. I don't know. I just do this stuff on my phone. Most of this I do all on my iPhone, just running Discord. And then, of course, cheese's crust. And DALL-E actually was rendered in DALL-E and the melting clocks. So I thought that was cheese's crust. And this one was kind of fun. Again, if you zoom in on these, they look like nothing, but just kind of the idea of what it portrayed, just my Jules Verne undersea adventure. I was really tickled with this. I was really happy with the results, even though there's nothing there. I mean, it's just blobs, but it's still kind of cool. This was a little more intense. Walter White making a pizza, so he had something to throw on the roof. And then somebody else's art, I give him credit here, from Dan Hartney, is in the Midjourney AI group on Facebook. And he did this. And I don't know what his actual prompts were, but this is what he titled it. A quiet day at Omaha Beach. Eating pizza gets interrupted by World War II. So anyway, I just thought that was really way out there. And,
So Jeff, there's a question already. Is
Yeah.
Brunsfeldo asks, is there any way to get higher resolution for these?
There is, but it's usually not within the applications themselves. And I'm going to get into a little bit of that here in just a minute.
Cool.
Good timing. This technology's taken off so fast that we are now able to utilize some of these apps. This is available on the App Store. It's just called Voice Art. Go and get it. I have one right here. All I did was I just spoke into it. You hit the microphone, and I just said, portrait of an old cowboy in a bar. And he's just sitting there, in a bar. So again, things aren't super realistic. I mean, you can see there's some elements that are fairly good, but you have to go a little further, and that's where I'm going to get into here. Now, a lot of you probably already know about Topaz's tools, especially Gigapixel. Use it quite a bit these days, but they have recently added in face recovery, which is fairly good. In this example, kind of hard to see at this resolution unless you're watching full screen, and I'm not. But actually, I'll expand my screen so I can see a little better. You can see that there's more detail in the faces. It cut down on some of the eye noise in there, but you can see the eyes are a little wally-eyed. I've just never gotten a really good face out of Gigapixel, but it's good for enlarging stuff. And so I tend to go with Rimini Web, company out of Italy that has this website, and it's just the easiest thing. You have no control over anything, really. It's drag and drop, no settings. Only thing you can do is choose whether you want PNG or JPEG to download at the end. But you can see just from these little examples here, I took an old retouch photo of my mom from high school, I think, and I ran that through, and that's what's on the right here. Of course, Abe Lincoln here, I'm going to get into more detail what I did with him, but you can see the difference here between the two. Here's one. I took an AI-generated person. This was out of the Midjourney beta that was up a few days ago, and I ran a ton of stuff through that for the whole 24 hours it was up. So, but you can see if you look at the eyes, they look like broken glass, and there's hard edges around the nose. There's earlobe missing. So I just went into Photoshop quick, brought her earlobe down, did a Gaussian blur with the blur tool on her face a bit. Then I ran it back through Rimini Web, which I just showed you. And the result I thought was quite nice and almost usable. I mean, I could almost use that for an ad for the biotech business I work for, which I tried a whole bunch of different people. And I ran this by our creative director, and she says, "Oh my God, we may not need stock photography in the future," even though we're a ways away. But I did all of this within maybe an hour and a half. I think I ended up with like 9 images, including the previous one and these. And you can see there's weird stuff, but I'm just playing with it to see if that process would work. And I was quite impressed. And we're just beginning. I mean, we're just starting. So just to show you my quick 3-step process, and I've been doing this for the film I'm working on. I've got hundreds and hundreds of archival images and historical images in this documentary I'm working on. And this has been my process to clean up 90% of them at least. Taking the original film scan or print, or just doing basic cleanup retouching just with the heel brush in Photoshop. Then I don't need to blur anything here because there's no hard, weird edges. So obviously it's a photograph. So I just export that as a JPEG, drop it onto Rimini Web, and it spits out this image you see on the right. Now, one thing you'll notice, it's in this case, it's not too bad, but in more modern photos and younger people images tend to look a lot more plastic-like. So I usually dial it down. Plus, they add a little bit of color hint to the eyes and the lips, and I don't like that in black and white photos. So I usually go in, I copy and paste it right in on top of my retouched image, and I'll desaturate the colors, and then I'll drop down the opacity, usually somewhere between 40 and 90. Is nothing more than 90. It depends on how bad the image is, and nothing less than 40, and it blends in really nice. So you get this nice result of the more clarity, but it still looks like an old photo. And in something like this, especially if it's a recognizable figure, historical figure or movie star or something, you want them to still look like them. You don't want them to look like somebody retouched the hell out of them, or sure, painted too much on them, or put somebody else's face on. I know a lot of people are using Face App and stuff to fix up their AI images. And to me, it just looks like Face App slapped on something else. So this, I think, is a more true representation of what a face should look like, whether it's recognizable or it's completely AI. As I showed you in my early example. I mean, not real people, but they look like they could be. So I think that's it for me. So
cool, excellent. And so for you, you tend to like to mix the worlds together, right? So
yeah, I do. I think AI has been a lot of fun just to play around with, and having fun with my friends online and whatnot, and we just come up with just the craziest stuff. And sometimes just you want to kind of stir up your creativity, then you just go in there and start typing in some stuff. It's just to kind of get inspired and go, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. And then you can source your materials. And a lot of these too, you can actually use a photo of your own as a reference source, whether it's a person or a scene or lighting or something like that. So you can use that and you go, oh, so it's a great idea generator. I don't see it quite at the level of being final art, but you can see it doesn't take long to take something there, depending on which engine you're using. And a month from now, this is all going to be moot because it's growing so fast. I saw somebody already has some code written that will let you edit live on video with just AI text strings. You can change the floor of somebody's, right, where they're dancing or whatever. I mean, it's amazing where this is going, I think. But again, it's a tool. And I've lived through, conversions from traditional art to digital, to desktop publishing, to everyone can be their own video editor, green screen, all of that. Everything's changing constantly, and you just kind of got to stay in the boat. Don't jump out. Yeah. There's sharks in the water.
Yeah, cool. Good, great work.
Thanks.
And Sean, would you like to introduce yourself and jump us through your images?
Sure. So I, like Jeff, my involvement with digital imaging and Photoshop and that world goes way back to about 1990s when I started using Photoshop. And before layers, Jeff mentioned doing composites with no layers. And so I definitely did a lot of that because I was interested in compositing from an early stage there. I eventually, after using it for several years, I got a job at a large regional photo lab doing Photoshop for photographers who are our clients. Pretty soon became the supervisor of that department, so I got to play with film recorders. And if you're not familiar with what a film recorder is, we would basically take our Photoshop work, the edits we did to other photographers' photos at their request, and we would image them back onto actual photographic film, whether that was slides or negatives or 4x5 transparencies, and then send those out to the optical department to make traditional prints, because that was before inkjet printers were a viable output medium. This was in the mid-90s. So I did that for about 5 years, and eventually, one thing led to another. Started co-authoring books on the subject, and teaching and developing online classes and whatnot. So I've written a number of books, co-authored several books, including Photoshop masking and compositing, which I co-authored with Katrine Eisman and Jim Porto.
I have that behind me.
Oh, great product placement there. Anyway, and I mention that just because, most of my imaging work, my visual work is firmly based in the world of photography. But I do love making composites, because when I'm making composites, that's kind of a stage where I can let my imagination run wild.
Great.
So Andrew, this is probably a good place to fire up the slides.
So I start off with this one, right?
Yeah, that one's fine there.
Great.
I'm going to show a few composites, which are just traditional composites made in Photoshop. And you can see more at my website there, which is just seanduggan.com. But so I like to, when I make a composite, I like to photograph landscapes, cityscapes, and then photograph other items and add those into the composite. These first three composites were made for that book that I mentioned earlier, Photoshop Masking and Compositing. So I have fun with this. There's definitely a puzzle aspect to making composites that I really enjoy. I like to figure it out to make all the pieces work together. And, one thing about Midjourney, or AI generated imagery, that fascinated me was the ability to actually just enter in a string of text and come up with something that I could use in a composite. And that is mainly the primary, at the moment, the primary interest that I have with AI generated images. We're still on Photoshop composites here. Here's the last one. So I really love to get really deep into the details to try to make things look as realistic as possible, even though it is obviously a fantastical scene, such as a craft like this strange aerial craft that has had a bad day. So this is the first image that I actually used AI in, and I did it very timidly, dipping my toes in the water. So this is part of another compositing series I'm working on that uses elements from old vintage photographs. So there are two main vintage photographs in here, the locomotive and the man. And then the man's head is actually made up of another 5 or 6 vintage photographs. So what I do is I will take pieces of many faces and put them together to make a new face, because I want this to be as anonymous as possible. I want this illustration not to look like an actual person, even though it does look like an actual person. So the landscape is in the central highlands of Iceland, and the smoke I photographed in my backyard. And then I decided I wanted to add a little bit more detail to the ridge in the background. So the first thing I did was I kind of blurred that a little bit and added a little bit of mist back there. And then I decided I wanted to have some sort of a city there. So I went into Midjourney and I started generating cityscapes. So these are straight out of Midjourney. I think the prompt was something like, 1920s city on hilltops with fog, or something like that. Nothing too specific. And I took several of these pictures of these cities and combined them and added them and the hills into the background there. So if we go back, there's what it looked like before, and there it is after. So, very timid first steps, blurring the background. I'm not going for the detail, because, if you look at the detail in some of these, it looks like a sketch. At least these ones do. This was early on, about a month ago. Back in the early days of a month ago. So then the next thing that I was playing around with was I was using lines from poetry or lyrics from songs to see what it would do. So this is a lyric from a Pink Floyd song on the Dark Side of the Moon album. The song is called Brain Damage. And I always loved that, the visual that this lyric conjured up. So here are some of the images, not all of them, some of the images that I ran through when I used this lyric as a prompt. And I first started with the lyric as you see written here, and then I modified it a bit using, different prompt punctuation and prompt craft methods to get different results. So you can see it's coming up with all these different results. And, sometimes you just have to churn through a lot of results, tweaking the prompt, trying to sort of get something that, and I had nothing clear in mind when I started this. I just wanted to see what it would give me. And that in and of itself is a pretty fascinating thing to explore, what it gives you when you just give it a line of poetry or a line from a song. So like these colorful ones up in the upper right, I really like those. And that actually gave me, the idea that, gee, I could just sort of get my own paper and make these things for real, and that's probably what I might do one of these days. But in the middle of the night, it wasn't practical to go get all that paper and do that. So, so anyway, I settled on this one that I circled up in the upper left, and then I upscaled it, and you can see that down at the bottom there. And from that, I made some additional variations. And you can see in kind of the eye areas of that picture, you can see kind of the ghosts of other little faces in the folded paper. So I was intrigued by that. So I rendered new versions based on that. And then I got this version down in the lower right there. And I kind of just like the overall shape of that piece of paper sculpture. And you can see that there's a definite face over on the left side of that paper sculpture, as well as kind of the hints of other faces within the paper. So that intrigued me. So I decided to use that as a base. And again, this started on my iPhone. And once I wanted to start working with it in Photoshop, I brought it over to my iPad. And in Photoshop on my iPad, I started working on it. This was like late at night. And I was already, out of my office, and I finished it the next day in Photoshop on the desktop. But so I started with this image here, and then in Photoshop, I did quite a lot of work and did that to it.
Cool.
And so the newspapers in the background, some of those are AI generated. Some of them are actual newspapers from the turn of the century, late 1800s.
Gives a nice sense of depth that you added those elements.
Yeah, and I'm just basically using what the AI gave me. Actually, I extended the bottom because the tip of the paper is cut off.
And Sean,
yeah,
there's a great question by Jay, I guess for you and for the panelists as well. Jay says, my question is, if two people gave the same prompt, would they get the same results?
Not as I understand it, no.
No.
Interesting.
Even if you do it yourself.
Yeah, I've done exactly that. I've done the same prompt over and over again, and I might get similar results, but I never get the same thing.
Excellent.
Yeah,
great.
So that was my second compositing work with this, and I just really enjoyed the process a lot. And let me just now go in and we'll talk about the third time. I've only been using this for about 5.5 weeks. And it has coincidentally been 5.5 weeks that have been incredibly busy at work. So I haven't had as much time as I would have wanted to play with this. So this is a composite made from a vintage photograph. You can see I've kind of added this sort of robot look to it and given him a suit of armor hand. So this is a character that I'm working with. And the great thing about AI generated images is that I could easily spin out several different versions of scenes to place him in. So there's another one. And again, these were all rendered with the prompt that said whatever, city alleyway, dark, 1920s, dark, mysterious, dangerous, something like that, And so I could try all these different, and I even did an earlier version, which I don't have here, which was old subway tunnels with Art Deco interiors, because I had him in a subway tunnel. So that's another version I'm exploring. But I like what this looked like here. So I went and did the full, more landscape-oriented picture, blurred the background in Photoshop, liked what was going on there, but I wanted to personalize it a little bit more, and that is essentially the way that I work with these. When I take an element from Midjourney, that's really the main program I've been working with, is I do want to modify it somewhat. So I've modified it with blur and color grading, obviously. But here in this next one, you can see I've added a little metal door over on the right and a large kind of concrete metal structure there. And I'm probably going to add another element in the background in the pool of light, maybe another person back there to further kind of flesh out this story, because that's the other aspect of compositing that I enjoy is just the aspect of creating a story and setting a stage and having characters play out some sort of a little drama on that stage.
Lisa Carney is here.
Hey, Lisa. So actually, this might be a good time, Andrew, to queue up those two little short videos. And I can explain, just for anybody who's not familiar with the process, what this looks like. Because when you first enter in a prompt, you typically get 4 variations of that prompt.
Okay. Here comes the first one.
Yeah, so let me just start this again. I can click that, right? So
Sure.
this is the finished version, but it happens over about a minute, so it doesn't happen as fast as you see it here.
So bring it back. There we go.
There we go. And so you can see it starts out very blurry and diffuse, and then gradually gets more detailed as it goes on.
Nice.
And then at the end of this, you can choose to upscale any one of these 4 or make new variations based on any one of the 4, or just re-roll a new set of 4 from the original prompt. And let's take a look at that last one too.
Okay, so here's the next one.
Yeah, so there we go. That one's already playing. This is just vintage hot air balloons over the ocean. We'll run that one more time. And again, it doesn't happen this fast. It takes about a minute. But it's a good, if you've never done it before, it's a good little illustration of what the process is like.
It's a fun little movie too, the evolution of it like that.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. I was happy when I learned that you could actually have Midjourney create the videos for you, because the first time I did it, I took screen grabs from my screen, and then I put all those screen grabs into Photoshop and made a little animated GIF, and this is a lot easier.
Cool.
They heard you.
They heard me, yeah.
They heard you.
Yeah, nice work.
Thank you very much. And for anybody out there who's using Midjourney, the way to do these little videos is you type -- video at the end of your prompt. And then after that, when it shows up, you have to right click on the image and choose the envelope emoji, and then it'll give you a link where you can download the video.
And one thing I was going to say that I would imagine is going to be coming out soon, the way they're constantly evolving with it, is the ability to do a prompt, create an image, and then be able to resubmit that image and then say, do a variation on this itself. So the idea that you upload an image and add a prompt, and then it creates something new. I think that would be...
Yeah. You can do that now too, because you could download your own image and basically, or not even download it. You could just sort of give the URL for that image into the prompt and then write a descriptive prompt.
Cool.
And actually, I had a situation where I took one of my own photographs and I gave it the URL for that. It was one of my pinhole photographs, and I just wanted the Midjourney engine to mimic as close as possible the style of that picture and what it contained. And it was a rocky coastal landscape, and I was really impressed with what it came up with. It didn't create an exact copy of the picture, but it created other coastal landscapes in the same aspect ratio with the same general, old photo sepia tone vibe.
Cool. Very cool. Excellent. And Nick, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. So I just figured I'd apologize in advance since I just got over COVID. I'm a little shot out, and I left my comb in my other shirt because it's like 95 degrees in New York. But let me put on one of my Koreshes. But I'm Nick Tengri. I'm from New York City, Hell's Kitchen. And I've been an artist for, I guess, over 20 years. I've worked in the arts. I eventually transitioned to digital arts. And I went to school at the SVA to learn learn animation, visual effects. And I went to Pratt Institute, both in New York City, to do, sorry, my voice, to do film and motion design. I currently run I Am York Imagery, which is the boutique animation, design. We do visual effects, stuff like that. And
cool. Should I jump into your slides? Put them up?
Yeah. So these are all done 100% by AI with the new code Stable Diffusion. And I mean, it's literally typing one prompt, and this has come up within 37 seconds direct through a Google Colab notebook. I mean, this was like the prompt, I think I put Bjork with antlers, oil painting by Norman Rockwell. And it's like, that's what happened. It's
a mix.
Crazy. I can't, as
quite a mix.
Traditional painter, like my income used to be from selling paintings. I mean, at one point in New York City, and to see something like this technology, it's just, it's scary and it's fascinating, you know, it's insane. But
cool.
Yeah, no, I don't.
And then you can hit the right key to
am I in
next? Yeah, you're in charge.
Oh, all right. So I was just trying to show different styles, different artists. So I did the same prompt with the different artists. If I'm pronouncing her name right, Tamara de Lempicka. It's a Polish artist, but it's more like this type of style. It's another Polish artist. I can't pronounce his name either, unfortunately. Egon.
Sheila.
But I just pretty much took famous artists, Van Gogh, obviously, Van Gogh. And then I tried more obscure things like throwing in Michael Jackson in the prompt and the Punisher from Marvel, and more Japanese-based art, Takato Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started really pushing the prompts, just adding random things and seeing where it would go. And, you know, I started getting really weird into the rabbit hole. And, I mean, it's mind blowing. This code just was released to the public 3 days ago. So, I mean, previously, like, for example, they were speaking about Midjourney. The new beta is using Stable Diffusion, which is this code. And that's why you're getting better eyes, you're getting better hands, where Midjourney, Disco Diffusion, all that stuff is like normally so abstract and the quality is just so poor. And but this code as well, you can't make it very large. The largest I can get it running directly is 704 pixels by 704 pixels. So, and then you use like Topaz AI to upscale and Photoshop to clean up. You know, if you really want to take this and turn it into something, an NFT or whatever, I don't know what people are doing nowadays. But
cool.
Yeah.
That's one nice thing about the output from Midjourney is that it's not that small. You know, if you upscale to the max size, I think you can get something that's like 2048 pixels on the long edge.
But they use the ESGAN code or whatever, and I feel like I've used that code before, and it's just it makes everything really smooth. And every time I used it, I didn't like the results. But
yeah, there's a couple of upscale methods. There's the upscale light, and now they have the upscale beta. And the upscale beta is, as you said, a lot smoother because some of the other ones are a little bit crunchy. But I've been able, like that last picture I showed with the strange one-eyed robot in the overcoat in the city, that I upscaled that background, you know, up to fit the main size of my image, which was, I don't know, it's 6,000 pixels wide or something like that. So, and you know, of course, I'm using it more as a background element. You know, part of it is blurred, so there's not the need or the expectation that there's going to be, you know, high-res photographic fidelity there. But for my purposes, how I want to use it, it's very viable.
Yeah, I found that for myself too. Even using the AI enhancement tools, like Rimini. Rimini tops out at about, I think, 2028 by 2028, and even though I'm working in 4K, you know, files, I'm able to use them as an overlay just to bring the clarity of facial detail out anyway. And since I'm blending them in, you know, usually around 50 to 70% on the project I'm working on, you can't see any degradation, you can't see any pixelation. And again, this is going to theatrical release, so it's going to be on a big screen. It's being judged by very heavy-duty eyes, and they think it's wonderful. So,
And we have a great question from Lisa for Nick and for everybody. Lisa asks, do you claim authorship of this work? Do you feel like it's yours?
I mean,
She
I feel
says
this
this is a tough issue.
Oh, sorry. This is a major ethical thing for me as a traditional painter and artist, who got his, at one point in my life, that was my income. If I was in a gallery today and someone showed up with one of these pieces and was like, yeah, this is my art, I typed in one sentence, and I can't say artist perspective. So I mean, it's same thing as like a lot of people gauge it back to photography. Oh, well, when you took a photo, weren't you just kind of stealing an image or whatever? But I mean, overall, it's getting so good. It's scary that I feel that the creative muscle we have in general as artists in the next generation won't be used the same, like where I was painting and experimenting and trying so many different things. I feel that someone growing up now will just be typing sentences and getting instant results, and they'll never, even the people I talk to in the community, they don't want to learn Photoshop, they don't want to learn After Effects, they don't want to learn, they're like, oh, well, this AI does it, or TikTok, and it's just,
Right.
I don't know, I frown upon that, but as a tool, professionally for me, it is mostly useless. I mean, maybe I could slap something on a t-shirt or whatever, but I would never go into a gallery and be like, this is my art, because it's not a computer made it, a robot made it.
Yeah, the young generation doesn't like the term patience is a virtue.
Well,
The idea of working on a skill that you slowly build is.
I have something to add to that, to Lisa's question, because I have a couple of, again, most of what I've played around with Midjourney is I've been creating elements to then use in other composites, and just because that's the way I'm familiar with working with composites, and also I feel I have more ownership over it as a creative by not just taking it straight out of what the AI gives me and modifying it. I have made 2 different composites that don't have any photography in them at all. They are just scenes that I got from Midjourney. And what was fascinating about it is that it gave me an idea, and then I started tweaking the prompts to push it in a certain direction. And so from the initial thing that it gave me, I spun off all of these other different variations, and that gave me other ideas for other things to add in. And I ended up making a composite that had about 7 or 8 different Midjourney separate images used, but it was similar to what it first gave me, but I totally made it much more personal. But I don't feel as much emotional ownership over that as I do from my other photographic based composites, where I'm taking most of the photographs. So in a way, it's similar, I would think, to using stock photographs that other photographers have made to create a composite.
So Lisa kind of adds to the, or is it? So Lisa says, I think this is going to be a soul killer for the upcoming generation.
Yeah.
So
well, I think social media is the soul killer for all generations. But
and they put you in prison all the time, right?
Yeah, Lisa, you came in after my slideshow, but I see it. It's a fun tool to play with. I'm already bored scrolling through social media, seeing everybody's Midjourney stuff, because it all looks the same to me. So, it's like any other new explosion of technology, especially in the arts. Look what's happened to our music over the last, 30, 40 years. I mean, my God, as a musician, I'm appalled by what is considered professional music now, but it's no different. I mean, again, it's a tool. It's how you use the tool. I use it a lot, like Sean does. I haven't really actually used it to create anything other than just playing with it and testing it and seeing how well it can work. I've written an article for Pro Video on it. You can go see it. I cover more detail of what I showed in my earlier presentation, but I see AI as being a tool that isn't necessarily just the image generation we're seeing now. It's a tool that's going to encompass a lot of things, including writing, which already is out there. It's already used in music already, and audio. This is too funny. That's good. That was good. I like that. So anyway, I see it as a tool. When it becomes something you can't get around, you can't use it as a tool anymore, and it just kind of takes over, then I think we've all lost then anyway. So
Right, and Lisa adds to it, saying, she says Sean is a seasoned artist. I think all of us are to a degree. But what about the upcoming generations who won't get the change to struggle and learn, especially on job front? I mean, that's a great point. Is that, what's going to happen is, if it's simple to just put in certain prompts, and then the whole evolution of this gets better and better, then what about the general challenges that have made us grow and give us a better sense of depth with our work?
I mean, I feel being an artist, a professional artist, a paid artist, it's more about marketing than it is about your talent. From my experience anyway, when I was working with other artists, the artists that used to market themselves better and were out more and they would talk and they could be more socially able were more successful, even if people thought they were less talented. So I feel now that anybody will be able to type a sentence, say in 6 months, and get a masterpiece, or even a full animation. Now it'll be all about, does this guy have 10,000 followers, or does this person have this sort of following, or do they have a fund, like a trust fund or something they could advertise so everyone thinks they're better than they are? But because it's in everyone's face with social media, will that make them a better artist because they'll sell more art? I don't know.
Right.
Again, the key is social media, and social media itself isn't just a community. It's basically, it is marketing to you.
Yeah.
Even when it's off. It's probably picked up keywords on my phone, and I'm going to get ads for all kinds of crazy shit today, just because it's always there,
Now I do want to also showcase some of the cool videos that Nick has made too before we jump back in the conversation.
Oh yeah, I use this. I forgot to mention. I also run a YouTube channel called Common Sense Made Simple, where I teach AI in creative ways, and I've previously used the channel to debut my experimental animations because by trade I am an animator, motion designer, whatever. Visual.
So can I pop one in there? Here we go. So. Pretty mesmerizing. That's great.
That's
pretty much
awesome.
loops endlessly. I made that a couple months ago using Disco Diffusion, and then I brought into After Effects and added additional elements, and lighting, color grading, stuff like that.
Great.
Cool.
Should I play the next one?
Sure.
Nice.
Cool.
And then mostly what I use this for currently professionally, it'll be the first contract. I'm under contract now for a big artist who's doing a music video there. It's going to be mixed traditional digital animation with aspects done AI rotoscoped over, where the last video I have up shows an example of that, of an animation I made in Cinema 4D, and then I took it into Disco Diffusion and matted out certain areas and added different things.
Cool. I'm going to play the last one as well.
Yeah, and I have the prompts.
Here we go.
As it goes.
Original footage.
I won't let you down, Goldie.
Cthulhu is a fictional cosmic entity. Painting of a clone crying in hell.
Painting of a jigsaw monster eating the world.
Painting of bloody black drippings and tentacles.
Droning in violent Japanese ocean waves.
Angry alien teeth. Cryptozoology. 80s make.
Polymorph is a fictional cosmic entity.
Painting of a female in samurai dripping with fear.
Said robot crying in outer space.
Ragnarok Norse mythology lighting boat dragon wolf.
Painting of death burning in fire.
and that's pretty much like it was a basic to show this artist the potential. Originally, he came to me with an animation. He said, "I just want you to do this over the animation," but he had a character, and I said, "But we can do so much more if I mat out certain parts and mask up certain parts, bring in After Effects and Cinema 4D and blah blah blah." And when I showed him this, he was just, his mind was blown. So I'm, like I said, we're under contract, so I can't talk too much about it. But if it does come
to clarify,
to light, it'll probably be the first music video from a major R&B artist with this style. So we'll see.
And to clarify, you're doing prompts that are creating these elements, but then you're bringing them into other apps to do the video animation.
So I would make a PNG sequence with whatever I would go into After Effects and see that this, for example, is a character I animated in Cinema 4D, brought into After Effects, sized it differently, removed the background, brought it back into Disco Diffusion using a Google Colab notebook, ran the code with the prompt to get the frames, put it back in After Effects, masked out the parts that would show the eyes and the teeth, and go from there, and then add the background and stuff like that. But it's a process. That's the thing. A lot of people come to me, and that's how I know about the sloth of the community, because they see things like this and they're like, "Oh my God, I typed a prompt and I can do this in Disco Diffusion for free." And I'm like, "Well, you can." Yeah. I show people on YouTube, my YouTube channel, how, but I said there's additional steps. And when I mentioned Adobe After Effects and this and that, right away they go, "I don't have time for that." And I'm like, "Well, if you don't have time for that, you're not going to get these results." Who's to say in a year the AI will be so smart it can do that too, which I think it will be able to within the next year, 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think
so here's the question that Lisa says, and I was even going to bring it up myself, is I think this is not so much a tool. I think for entertainment, art, and design companies, this will downsize huge for comping design ideas. That is current major employment opportunity for artists. This is going to go out the door. So question, being, do you think this is a job killer?
If I was in school now going for animation and this existed, I would drop out immediately. I'm assuming, I don't want to be too negative because this is how I survive on animation, but I think in the next five years, possibly 10 years, my job will be done 100% by an AI. I think graphic designers will be eliminated first, then animators, and then, the technology is moving so fast.
But I think that Photoshop artists will still be needed to touch things up, like Sean was showing.
With control things, but it'll be a different
illustrators, though. They might be
coding or something. Like if you don't know coding, not you personally, but now you won't be able to run the AI a certain way, or you won't be able to decipher. Like for example, earlier they asked a question, I was muted, about the prompts and how you change it. If you go in the code, you could adjust the seed. So if say you did a Midjourney prompt, I don't know if you could get in the code of Midjourney because it's on Discord, but you could open it up and always you say the seed 11355 or whatever, and it'll always do something similar in that sense. Or you could program the code to do a random seed. Or if we get to showing my code, I'll get more specific about that. That's the real nerdery shit.
And this is where I still see this as it's a tool even at that point, because I came through the late 80s. First thing I was using was a Mac SE and a laser writer. And I had my own stat camera in my studio, but I was paying $60 a page for typesetting at the time because I was doing my own paste up and everything. But I'd still have to go to a typesetter. Well, once I had the Mac, I was able to do my own typesetting for 90% of everything I was doing. And I would do it at 200%. Taking in the stat camera, shrink it all down, tighten up all those laser writer edges, and it passed. I was doing all kinds of brochures and all kinds of print work, back in the late 80s, when other people were just getting into desktop publishing. Of course, a lot of my pre-press work went out the door when somebody's nephew had a computer and could do flyers and brochures for the company, and they all looked like hell. So, yeah, well, there you go. So, everything goes through a wave. I've been through so many different waves of everything through 40 years in the industry. So I see this as another wave. You can either ride it or dive under it. But it's going to go whether you like it or not. Doesn't mean you can't have opinions about it, but it's here. So.
And Sean, I was going to say, Sean, your view on this too?
Yeah, similar to Jeff's, I don't think that it's going to put designers out of work, because I think that, there's still going to be the need for designers, even if designers are going to be relying on some of the AI tools for comping and mood boards and things like that. And, especially I think for more high-end commercial campaigns, they're still going to want to have a designer running the show on things like that.
But one instead of five, that's the thing,
Sure. I mean, obviously it's going to change things, just like, so many technological developments over the course of human history have changed things and professions and made certain professions obsolete and whatnot, or down.
So in the future, there'll be like job listing, professional prompt writer.
It could be.
Universal income. I mean, because humans will be obsolete.
At the moment, like for me, I've been using it for 5 weeks. It's kind of like entertainment. It's basically it's very entertaining. It's fascinating, and I see it improving. I've seen it improve a lot in just the 5.5, 6 weeks I've been using it. And so, as somebody who makes my living with working with images and digital images and teaching it and licensing images and whatnot, I'm really curious about that, and I can see it having a role in some of the compositing work that I do. But at the moment, I'm not. Even though some of the images straight out of Midjourney have been really amazing and cool, I'm not to the point where I throw it up on a gallery wall and say, hey, come to my opening and see my Midjourney art. I'm interested in taking elements that it gives me and either using those ideas to then go out and make more traditional images, or using parts of what Midjourney or some other generator gives me and integrating those into a more traditional digital composite, such as I've been doing for many years.
And Nick, Nick?
Oh no, in that sense, I feel it's great as a tool when it comes to stock photography, like you're saying, for compositing examples. I mean, it's definitely great for that. I mean, you're going to put other companies out of business as opposed to like using DALL-E now instead of stock photography, Shutterstock or Adobe Stock or whatever. But it's overall, I mean, tool-wise, it is going to eliminate some jobs. When I say it's going to eliminate designers, I don't mean next year. I say at some point, which may be 20 years, I don't know, or whatever. I mean, but will we have garbage men in 20 years, or will it be robots? It's all hypothetical.
Well, we'll always have garbage. That's for damn sure.
That's true. That's you always need that.
But
even
digital garbage,
even stock photography itself. I mean, who remembers having to buy CDs full of stock images and music and everything? I mean, I wrote an article back in 1999 on Publish magazine about the new digital ATM machine. It's like, oh, I need something because I got a deadline in the morning. It's 3 a.m. What the hell am I going to do? It's like, if you didn't have it in your grasp, there wasn't a way to get it. And now we just take it for granted. Oh, I can just go find this and go buy that and license this and throw everything together, or I can use that and do something with it. We as professionals have grown accustomed to the ease and use of things that we didn't create, but we're using them to bring them in and design with them and work with them to recreate something. Do I give credit to the stock library for the smoke that I used for overlaying in a special effects shot that I did? No. I bought it, I licensed it, but so we take a lot of stuff for granted. It's there, it's accessible to us. I didn't create it, but I'm using it to recreate with it. And I really think that's going to be still the future moving forward with all this AI.
And so there's the possibility of it being a job killer in certain instances, but on a positive side, Martin states here that for handicapped people who can't use their hands to create art, they finally can now do so. And Martin has spoken to someone who feels great with AI because now they're giving them the possibility to do something they couldn't do before.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I think that's great as well. And even in a sense where some people are just not creative. I mean, so now they can be creative, which I personally think in a positive manner, making more people creative in general, whether it's by typing a sentence, if that's all you are able to do. I mean, it's great because we're still creating more art overall. and I just want to see more art and more imagination and more, in general.
My only concern is the people, and I've seen it in my groups, my Facebook groups, is the people who go in and they do a prompt, and then it pumps out the work, and then they post it, and they don't even want to like state that they used Midjourney or anything. They just say, "This is my art."
Well,
I think it's cheating. Someone recently said, which I thought was very funny, was they said they did not like AI art or Midjourney. And that's their view. It's not my view, but they said they didn't like it because they felt like it was like someone who could call up a pizza shop and say, "I want a pizza with sausage, pepperoni, olives, blah 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 blah," and then when it gets delivered, he says, "I'm such a great chef."
Yeah, exactly. You took it out of the freezer and stuck it in the microwave. Voila.
But then who's to say too? So say you take an image from say Midjourney and then you draw a smiley face on it. Now does it become my original art too? I don't know. That's right. How do you gauge how much you have to manipulate it until it becomes yours?
Art's always been subjective, though.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
I mean, art and photography, anything visual. Actually, even recorded music. Since the beginning of recordings, it's had some subjectivity to its validity. Well, it wasn't live performed. You're laying down tracks and whatnot. So I mean, this has been going on since the at least the 40s and 50s.
So my question is what happens when someone has a show and they sell their work, and someone who, I don't know, works for Midjourney walks in and totally knows that's their something from their prompt, and then I think I've already seen like warnings of that, but like what happens when Midjourney says they want a percentage of the sale and people start selling these as NFTs?
Then you use DALL-E 2, or you use Disco.
You go somewhere else.
Yeah, you go somewhere else. That's the thing. Competition.
Right.
It's capital.
But I mean, don't you think there'll be like people suing each other and like legal battles
I'm
happening?
sure.
Lawyers in America love to sue,
Yeah.
so I'm sure they'll figure out something at some point.
Yeah.
And then Elon's going to take everything because the internet's going to all be running through his satellites. So
Exactly.
He'll make Twitter an AI app.
I'm going to drive my Tesla right in the Hudson River.
I'm going to have to leave soon because I've got a conflict at 2. So I'm going to have to duck out here. But
thank you so much,
I really
Jeff.
appreciate being
great
part
stuff.
of all of this. This has been great. And hope we can do some more as this technology evolves, which, next week? It's going so fast.
That's the big issue, too. I even released a tutorial showing how to do video rotoscoping in Disco Diffusion 5.2.
Skynet.
A month later, now it's at 5.6. And I'm like...
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yep, it's insane. So anyway, thanks again, everybody. Enjoyed this. And thanks again, Andrew, for inviting me.
See you around, Jeff.
All right, take care.
Good job.
Bye.
Now there were 3.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Martin says AI is a great base for overpaints if you work with it as textures, and working schematic, the final work is feeling no different like using classic textures and drawings.
I've done that. I mean,
Good point. Yeah.
I've used, when ArtBreeder first came around, which I mean wasn't that long ago, I was using because they were like really smooth, that like raw, the eyes were messed up. I would use it as a base to paint like a portrait, but I wasn't putting it in a gallery or anything, but still I feel I manipulated it enough in theory, like the same way as going over a texture traditionally painting,
So
I was just going to say that in terms of idea generation, and I've experienced that myself, is that I'll often get ideas based on the images I'm getting back if I'm trying to push the prompts in a certain way and create a certain look. And sometimes it gives me these ideas where I don't actually use the Midjourney output in anything, but it makes me realize, oh, I know where I could take a photograph similar to that. And so I'm going to go out and make a photograph that will actually be something that I've created. But the idea to push it in that direction and go out and create that photograph came from running through different scenarios in Midjourney. So I appreciate that aspect of the creativity of just being able to very quickly go through many different images, and you can drill down and distill down into what is resonating with you.
I feel for storyboarding. Storyboarding, I mean, that's great. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever done storyboarding before, but it's just so. And then if the client is like, no, well, let's change this and let's change this and let's change this. I mean, you have to take a lot of time to redraw everything. And now it's like you can get a base concept to show your client, and he could be like, oh, now that makes sense. Now I understand it. You're getting it, instantly, 40 generations or whatever in 10 minutes.
So for both of you, what would you say when someone feels like Lisa does, where she says she feels like the Lorax here? I think this is so sad. So what would you say to someone who feels that, this is like, a soul killer, job killer, going to take away from the beauty of the work that people used to do?
I mean, you got it. It's happening no matter what. So I feel it's happening fast. You have to stay positive. If me, for instance, I think about it too much, I do get depressed, and I'm like, whoa, and at the same time, I'm fascinated by it, but I also know what it will do. And I even my fellow artists, I know great illustrators, great painters, that I show them this technology and they don't paint anymore. They don't draw anymore because they're like, I have this now. I have DALL-E 2. Why am I going to draw? I said, because don't you enjoy doing that creative that way? But I mean, I don't know. Everybody's different, but I feel we just have to stay positive in what it can do. For example, he said like some people who can't paint because of different reasons now can and create, which is amazing. I never thought of it like that. That's amazing. So. And
Sean, your take?
Yeah, for me personally, I've experienced it more as as I said, right now it's entertainment, and I'm interested in exploring it and seeing what I can do with it. To kind of echo something that Jeff said earlier, is that you get used to the style, and you go, oh yeah, that's a Midjourney image. It's just sort of, you see them going by on social media or in the Discord app, and there's a lot of similarity. But overall, I've found it to be a very creative experience working with this. It has actually kind of fired up my creativity in a lot of areas, not just for the AI generated images, but in how I might use it in my own photographic imagery, or how I might go out and create a photograph because an AI image gave me that idea. So personally, I found it to be very invigorating and creatively stimulating playing with this. Obviously there's going to be some people whose job descriptions may be impacted by this as the technology gets better and better, but it's not going to stop people from making other types of art. People are still going to be painting because they love the process. They love to paint, to put paint on the canvas, or sculpting, or making photographs, or doing dance and theater. It's not going to get rid of all that other sort of art. And so I would say, focus on the kind of art that doesn't make you sad, that makes you happy. And this is here now. It's not going away. And as Jeff said, you either have to, ride the wave or have the wave crash over you.
Yeah. And I do think
not even go to the beach.
I do think you could use it as a tool to, like you said, kind of like have sketches for things that you want to execute yourself.
Yeah. Totally. That's a part of the process that I didn't expect to experience that, making computer generated images and then getting ideas to go out and make actual images with my cameras, whether they are digital or film cameras. So it's sort of this cross-pollination or cross-fertilization across all the different ways that I think about making imagery.
Sure.
Well, I feel as long as I enjoy seeing people using it as a tool, like we've been speaking about, but also I don't want people to use it as a crutch. I don't want someone who's just about to go to art school because they really are passionate about painting and they discover Midjourney or DALL-E 2 or one of these, and they say, well, now I'm making this beautiful art piece, and everyone's like, wow, you're such a great painter. Wow, you're this, wow, you're that. And your ego gets boosted, and you're like, well, I don't have to work. So what, what does it matter? Now everyone thinks I'm an amazing art. I don't know. So it's like in that perspective. But when I see artists like you're talking about using sketches or adding to your composite, I feel that makes AI amazing. Or like if I'm using it as a base or as a storyboard to show a client, I can make a storyboard in a day as opposed to a week. So I feel in that sense, it's amazing. But when you're using it as a crutch to not do the other stuff, that's what bothers me personally.
Yeah. And I think that artists, if you can infuse something with your personal style and it still looks like, you know, your stuff, even though you may have used parts of AI generated imagery in it, I think that is also key too.
Right. And you know, it might inspire people in opposite directions. So as Lisa says, I'll tell you this, AI has gotten me to start oil painting now because I'm so disgusted.
That's a good thing. Not being disgusted, but, you know,
Yeah.
exploring
Motivated.
other art. I've seen some really cool things that you know, graphic novel designers and comic book designers have done, and they've used Midjourney to create entire, you know, stories where they've been able to, you know, get the same character in different sorts of scenes, and then they add the little speech bubbles and stuff, and it looks great, you know, if you're into that sort of. But of course, the problem is that if everybody's doing that, it's all going to look the same.
Right.
You know, it might be great for somebody who doesn't have the budget to hire an actual artist to do their illustration, so that they can proof it out and storyboard it and get a proof of concept. Right. But I think, you know, if I was doing that, I would still want to have the uniqueness of a specific artist to draw the panels.
All right, let's hope.
At the same time, too, say like years ago, I used to design album covers for independent bands and stuff. And like in the beginning when I was starting out, and for say now they could use DALL-E and get 100 versions where it might take me all day to create one version. And then say they want it in the style of, you know, Van Gogh or something, they could just say, you know, blah, 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 describe their album cover in the style of, you know, Van Gogh or Picasso or DALL-E, whoever they want the look of, and they'll get 100 versions. Or, I mean, the code I have here, I mean, I could go to sleep and wake up and have 5,000 paintings in the morning, you know, and just be like, I like number 5 and number 10. Cool. NFT. I'm rich. I'm going to space. You know, I don't know.
We will see. We will see. Any questions and comments from the
Anybody?
questions? I think, you know, Lisa made her views very clear, and I agree to some degrees. Yeah. Bob says, it doesn't seem that it all looks the same when I see those that really are creating some incredibly deep imagery. So yeah, I mean, if you get into the fine art of really knowing what prompts do, then you can generate images that have a bigger depth than other people who are doing very basic prompts.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There are some people who have delved deep into the prompt craft, and I haven't had the time, unfortunately, in the past 5 weeks to go too deep.
Sure.
But yeah, some of the stuff I've seen has been pretty
rabbit hole. If you, John Oliver recently talked about Midjourney, I think one of these Sundays, John Oliver from HBO, and he spoke about Midjourney recently, and he went into a deep dive about, I guess somebody was prompting him and a bunch of different things with a cabbage, and I mean, it was pretty hilarious. But I feel Midjourney and like Disco Diffusion are still pretty really abstract. Midjourney's introducing Stable Diffusion, which is pretty detailed, but I mean, it's still not perfect. It's still some way to go.
Yeah, and Martin says, I think it is a massive change, if positive or not, who knows. The Midjourney chief said in 10 years, there may be an Xbox streaming games or something.
I could see that. I could definitely see. I mean, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Cog Video, but I mean, right now on Hugging Face, you can I think they type in a man walking on the beach, and it creates a video of a man walking on the beach. Yeah, it looks horrible, but it creates a man walking on the beach. Right. So who's to say in 10 years I write Brad Pitt driving a tank on the moon, fighting Martians, and then you write the whole script, and the AI is like, boom, photorealistic movie. You know, like if you're familiar with Unreal Engine and these new, you know, a lot of these 3D softwares, I mean, they're so easy to use. They're free, open source for the most part.
Isn't that already a Brad Pitt movie?
Probably. If it is, I want to see
He's working on it right now.
Yeah. He's like, I got an idea. He's in there right now. He's a Facebook user. I see him.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
He's sniping on your idea. He's story user.
Great. I think this was a great journey into touching upon AI art.
I mean,
hopefully we'll have more of these panels in the future. So just wanted to let you know that you can follow the panelists online. So you can follow Sean on his website. And even though Jeff is gone, you can follow him at the Sound Visions Media. And Nick at I Am York.
And has all my links to my Instagram, my YouTube, and everything. I mean, check it out. I'd love to see what you do with what I create and how I mean, I just started doing tutorials about 2 months ago. So I try to keep it updated as often as I can with in between my, running my business and other things. So
excellent. And I was going to remind everyone to please subscribe for digital art, Photoshop, and photography focused live streams and tutorials on my Digital Art Drew YouTube channel. And I will be posting the recording, as I always do, to the various Facebook groups, Twitter, LinkedIn, and it'll be on YouTube. So thanks everyone for attending. Really appreciate it. And keep your eye out for other different panels in the future of similar topics. So,
well, thank you for putting this on and hosting it so capably, Andrew. And
thanks, Sean.
This was fun. My social awkwardness wasn't too bad, I hope. I think I might have stuttered a few times, but I was more comfortable towards the end. This is my first live stream ever. I'm not a public speaker, so
you did fine.
You did great.
So yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Nick, and thanks everyone for watching. And let's see a little last comments here. Thanks for being here and sharing, says Bob. Thanks so much, Eleni says. And good stuff, says Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, says Albert. Thanks all. Enjoy the Midjourney. And Facebook user, very interesting. Thank you.
Brad Pitt.
That's right.
On the moon.
Great. Well, thanks everybody, and keep your eye out for the link to the recording. Thanks a lot.